Hello, and welcome to session 3 of our Brightspace Assessment PD series. In today's session, we are going to be looking at rubrics. We're going to look at the different types of rubrics available to you, how to create rubrics, how to add expectations and feedback to them, and then also how to attach them to your assessments, your assignments, quizzes, etc., and how to use them to grade students and to provide feedback to them. So the first thing that we're going to look at today is the two types of rubrics available to you and how to create them. So in order to access rubrics, you can click on the assessment icon group in your navbar and click on rubrics here. If you have an older navbar from a previous year or previous course and you don't see that assessment icon group, you can click on course admin, go down to the assessment section, and you'll see rubrics there. So if we click on rubrics here, it's going to take us to this screen. Now we already have one rubric created that we've used earlier, but right now we're going to create a new one. So we just simply create new rubric. So here, right here, we see type. So this one is called analytic. There is also holistic. Those are the two types of rubrics that are available to you. Now let's start with holistic. So holistic rubrics only have one criterion. With holistic rubrics, there are two ways of providing a mark. For example, you can either have a percentage mark and assign a certain percentage to each level, or you can just have no score. So this is just for students to see what level they're at. So if you wanted to assign a percentage, you could just have a percentage for each level, and then you could that's the grade that the students would get when you select each level, or you could have no score. If you wanted to add another level, you can simply click here, and that will create it before level 4. If you wanted to create one after level 1, you click there and it would create a level there. So if you want to have some more levels in order to select on your holistic rubric, you could do that. If you don't want them, you could just click the delete and get rid of those levels. So, I mean, one way you could possibly look at using a holistic rubric is to track, let's say, learning skills, for example, responsibility or independence, things like that. So let's say we wanted to track responsibility on a particular assignment. So say it's maybe a group assignment and you wanted to give them some feedback on their learning skills on that particular assignment. You could then change the name to responsibility, and you could change level 4 to excellent, level 3 to good, level 2 to satisfactory, and level 1 to needs improvement. In that way, you could give them feedback specifically on that, whatever assessment you attach this to. But again, the big thing with holistic rubrics is that there is only one criterion that you're assessing. So just one idea, maybe one learning skill, maybe one learning goal, something like that, where you're only doing one thing, you're going to use a holistic rubric. So let's say we're going to save this now, responsibility as a holistic rubric. So notice that it says our status here is published. We could leave this in a draft, and if we leave it in a draft, it won't be available for us to attach to other assessments at this point, or we could just leave it published, which means it's now available to use. So let's say we're just going to leave it right like that, and we're going to hit close. And now you can see we have a rubric called responsibility, and it's a holistic rubric, and it's text only. If we had chosen the percentage method, that would say percentage. So now let's take a look at an analytic rubric. So with an analytic rubric, notice it just comes automatically with these 3 criterion to edit. We can add or remove those criterion however we'd like. If there are too many and we want to get rid of a criterion, we could just delete it like that. And if we wanted to add another one, we could just add it. So adding more criterion here, we would just hit the plus. So let's say we have 4 levels and 3 criterion. Right now, we have this set to points scoring. So that means since we have 3 criterion and 4 levels, each level is worth that many points. So for example, it's set up as level 4 is 4 points, level 3 is 3, level 2, and level 1. So each criterion then is worth 4 points because that's the maximum score you can get on it. And there are 3 criterion at 4 points. So this is going to be marked out of 12. So when you go to provide feedback, you're going to click on whichever level they have in each criterion, and it's going to auto-generate a score out of 12. Then based on that, it's going to give an overall score. So level 4 is going to be 11 or higher, level 3 is 8 or higher, level 2 is 5 or higher, or level 1 is 0 or higher. So whichever one it falls into, it's going to assign that level. So notice there's a spot for feedback and expectations here. We're not going to talk about that right now. We are just going to look at just assigning the points and how to put this on an assessment and use it. We'll come back later in the video and talk about these expectations and initial feedback. So right now, we have this analytic rubric that is using points scoring. So as you can see now, I've gone and put in what we're actually the students would need to achieve each level and each criterion. For example, if they had a good understanding of criterion 1, that would be here. So whatever your criterion 1 is, you're going to put that here. All right, so let's say you wanted another level that was like a level R, right? We could go here and put level R, and put needs improvement in criterion 1. Right, and we could put that as what we can check. Now, you might also want to do a plus minus system where you could go and add, for example, a level 4 plus here, and then make that 5 points, right? You can do whatever point system you'd like. But right now, let's just stick with the level 4 and the level R. Okay, so again, we're going to have 3 criterion, all out of 4 for a total mark of 12. Now down here, we could have the overall score. So let's say this is on a particular learning goal or a particular skill, say like skill 1. And down here, it's going to generate this for you, and we could say like excellent understanding of skill 1, because that's ultimately the thing that we're evaluating here. And we could go through and add the rest of our feedback items here. So notice though that when we added another criterion level up here, it kind of shifted some of these out of. So right now it's out of 12, but it's looking for 14 or more here. So just double check that those are correct. So let's go back and put those where they were. Like so, and there we are. So let's hit close, and now that rubric is ready to be added to an assessment, and we'll show you what that looks like in a couple minutes. Now let's go back into the create a new rubric screen, and this time we're going to do a rubric. It's analytic again, but we're going to give it no score, so you're not going to see any points on here. So what's going to happen is, based on all of your criterion, you're still going to check all these boxes, but it's only going to generate a level here. It's not going to generate a numeric grade. So if we attach that to, say, an assignment, we'll have to input the numeric grade based on whatever level is generated. But for us right now, we would just do that same thing with the criterion. So then if we go and edit this rubric to make it look like our points rubric, but this time with no score, you'll see there's no opportunity for score, and there's no score here, but it will just give you that level. So we'll go ahead and take a look at what that is going to look like when you actually go and attach that to an assessment and evaluate your students using this rubric. The last type of scoring that I want to look at here is if you select custom points. So notice what happens here is you're allowed to enter scores for different levels independently for each criterion group. So for example, a level 4 in criterion group 1 could be worth something different than a level 4 in criterion group 2. So let's say we went back and took a look at that points rubric we had, but now made it custom points. So right now it's going to behave exactly the same way as our points one would because all of the points are the same for each of the levels. But let's say that criterion 1, we want it to be worth more than criterion group 2. So instead of 4, 3, 2, 1, we're going to make it 8, 6, 4, 2. So now the maximum mark they can get here is 8. So now the total rubric is going to be out of 16 because there's 4, 4, and 8. And let's say we wanted criterion group 3 to be worth a little less. So we could go 2, 1.5, 1, and 0.5. You can use decimals here for that as well. So we can then have those as custom points scales so that each of these different criterion can be worth different values. Again, down here, now that it's out of 14, we could adjust what would be a level 1, 2, 3, or 4 here. We could leave them the same. Right. Well, let's say this is now 12, 9, and 6, something like that. All right. So now we can have these custom points, like I said before, where we're setting it up where each of the criterion levels are worth something different. So let's go ahead and save that and close it. And notice that every time we make a change, it's automatically saved. We simply have to close, and then everything's saved. If there's a lock here, like there is for this sample rubric, that simply means that it has already been used in assessment, so we can't edit it. Once you start assessing students with a rubric, you can't edit it anymore. Also notice that the status of these two are draft, so let's make sure that they are published so that we can go ahead and use them. So remember, we do that right here. So if we switch that to published, that will now be published. So I've gone ahead and made sure that both of these rubrics are now published. So one more option I want to show you when it comes to customizing rubrics is the idea of adding a criterion group. Now remember, if we wanted to add another criterion, we could select here. If we wanted to add another level, we could select here or here. But if we wanted to add another criteria group, we could click there. And essentially what happens is it looks like it almost creates another rubric below. And really all it's doing is separating the criteria into two different categories. And you could do 3 or 4. For example, if all of these criterion had to deal with, like, let's say learning goal 1, we could put learning goal 1 here, and then these all have to do with a particular learning goal. And let's say the criterion here has to do with another learning goal. So we could do this new criterion under there, put what we need for each level, and treat it exactly the same way. And it's still going to generate a total mark, right? It's out of 16 now because there are 4 of them. This is just that points one that we looked at earlier with another group. So you can add more criterion here. You could add another criterion group, and it just allows you to organize your rubrics if that's what you need. So I will just show you quickly how to add these rubrics into different assessments. So for example, if it's an assignment, all I've done here is gone into assignments and created a new assignment. I'm calling it Untitled 4. So if we wanted to attach one of the rubrics we just created, we could go here to Evaluation and Feedback, click Add Rubric, and go Add Existing. And we could do, let's say it's that holistic rubric we created called Responsibility. Now, if you forget what rubrics look like, you could just click on this little magnifying glass thing, and it's going to open that rubric for you to preview it so that you can remember what's there. But for our purposes, we're just going to go click and add selected. So now this rubric will show up on this assignment. And let's say we wanted to attach another rubric to this Untitled 5 assignment. Let's pick one of the points ones that we did. So let's pick the custom points one. So because we have a rubric with points, we might want to add that to the gradebook. So if we went to the gradebook, we could say we're going to grade this item first, and we're going to make it out of, let's say, 10 points. Now, remember that the custom points rubric is actually going to generate a grade that's not 10. It's going to be different. But whatever this is, it's going to adjust it. So if this was out of, let's say, 16, whatever mark the rubric generates out of 16 will automatically be adjusted to be out of 10 to go in the gradebook. All right, now in the previous video, we went through all the different ways of creating grade items or linking them to grade items. So if you need to brush up on that, please watch the previous video and how to do that. But we're just going to save and close here. So now if we wanted to grade one of the students' assignment with the holistic rubric, we're going to click on the assignment and then on evaluate. And then we see this responsibility rubric here. If we click on that, we can either pick excellent, good, satisfactory, or needs improvement. So that's a quick way that we can just kind of track our learning skills with a holistic rubric. So if we click good, then Pam is going to see a good for responsibility on this assignment. If we want to do the same thing with that custom points rubric that we generated, that's our Untitled 5. If we click on evaluate, it'll take us to the assessment screen. And here is our rubric. So notice we assigned an overall grade out of 10. And our total score here is actually going to be out of 14. So notice again that criterion 1's out of 8, criterion 2's out of 4, and criterion 3's out of 2. So let's say we give Andy a level 3 there, a level 4 there, and a level 2 there. It's going to give us 10.5 out of 14, which will automatically be scaled down to 7.5 out of 10. And that's what's going to go in the gradebook and the grade that Andy will see. So that's what it looks like when you assess using the rubric. You select all the levels, and then it automatically generates your overall score. And if you do have it as a graded item, it automatically populates it with the points if this is a points rubric.
All right, so now that we've seen how to create the rubrics and attach them and even use them to evaluate, let's go back into the rubrics and we'll look at a couple of the additional features that you can add inside there. So I know Pete just kind of ran through creating all of these different types. I'm going to go into skill 2, which is a no point one, and I'm going to go in and edit that rubric. But actually, it's probably important to notice here, you see these 3 ones that have locks next to them. I can't actually click on the drop down and say edit options. It's not going to let me edit anything about the actual rubric itself because it's already being used to assess learner work, which is actually a good thing. So we wouldn't want to be able to change the rubric once we've used it to assess work already. But since skill 1 and skill 2 have not been used yet to evaluate student work, then we can actually go inside here and click on the drop down and select edit. And we can edit anything inside this rubric here. Now notice this one has the no score, and I'm going to leave that on there, but notice below here, below every single one of these feedback sections for the criterion 1, criterion 2, there is initial feedback that you can actually set as default. So that means whenever you select level 4, level 3, level 2, level 1, whatever it is you select on your rubric, it's going to default to the initial feedback that you set inside here. So if we go into initial feedback here and type in, this is suggested next step, right? Whatever you want to put inside for each of these things, right? It will default that feedback whenever you go in and assign that to a student. So what you could then do is actually take that feedback, and I'll actually say for level 4. Right, and I'll say for level 3, and obviously you get the idea here. But you could do that for all of the different parts to the initial feedback. Now I'm going to put it in just for the level 4. So I'll just say level 4 feedback criteria 2 and level 4 feedback criteria 3. I'm going to save and close this. Actually, it does save automatically, so I'm just going to close this. And now what I'm going to do is go in and I'm actually going to attach a rubric to one of the discussions. So I'll go into discussions here. And for week 1, we will edit this topic, go into the assessment page. And I think we already created an assessment on this, which is okay, but we can add a rubric into discussions as well. So if we select add rubric, we are going to do the skill 2, which is no points. That's the one that we just looked at, and we'll add that selected one and save and close. So now what we can go inside here and do that, this week 1 has a rubric attached, and if we select this drop down, we can then go assess topic. And what that will allow us to do is we'll be able to see all of the students. We can go in and say, all right, well, for this topic, notice there's a topic score, but then there's also a skill. So I can select skill 2, and what will end up happening here is I'm going to select level 4 for all of Pam's feedback. Notice that's the feedback that comes up, suggested feedback for that, level 4 feedback for crit 3. And I can then type in some additional feedback. So I can say, great work, Pam. Here are some additional suggestions, and I can publish that. Now that's okay. Not all the rubric criteria have been scored. You know what? I will continue grading because it's just the overall score at the bottom. I'll give her the level 1 at the bottom overall. I think I got everything else. Yep. I'll publish that. And now Pam will have that, notice, that published feedback inside there. So if I go and now look at this as Pam, I just want to show you what she will see with that feedback. So if we impersonate Pam right here, then what we can do is we can go into that discussion. And we'll open that discussion up. Now she can still go inside and post in that discussion, that's fine, but notice what you'll see here is right at the top, you see this feedback where there's a grade, which we never gave her a grade out of 10, so that's okay. We're just focusing on the rubric. Notice this is the feedback that I typed in individually for Pam. Great work, Pam. Here are some additional suggestions, and then view graded rubric. Now the graded rubric is going to have all of the feedback that was automated from that rubric. For level 4 on criteria 1, that comes up. For level 4 criteria 2, that comes up, and that comes up. And then you get the overall score. So Pam can go in and see that graded rubric with the automated feedback as well as that feedback right there. So very handy tool to use when you're looking at creating those rubrics. If you want to put in the automated feedback, that is going to be inside again. When we go into rubrics, I'm going to have to go to this skill 1 now because since I've used this to assess something, it's locked and I can't edit it anymore. But what I can do, I can select this drop-down arrow, and instead of editing it, I can just copy it right there, and it's going to create a copy of that. Notice, copy of skill 2, no points. Now I can go inside here and edit anything I want to make a change of for a new rubric, right? So you can see if I want to put in the initial feedback differently, we can do that. So very useful there. So let's copy the custom points rubric for skill 3. We'll copy that and we will edit that one and attach it to a new assignment. So let's go inside here, and there's one thing I want to add on this one. I'm not going to do the initial feedback here because I don't want it to clutter up everything. But if you look over on the left-hand side, you'll notice under the criteria, you'll see the option to add in expectations. If you've added expectations into the course, you can attach your expectations to this rubric as well. And you can do that specifically for the criteria on the rubric. So if I select expectations here, any of the expectations that I've loaded into this course will end up being inside here. So in this one, I could select, oh yeah, 2DC.1. That's that expectation right there. Now you'll notice these colors came up. which is somewhat useful for visualizing what the expectation achievement is going to be. If I select this expectation here, I can actually select LS1 and LS2 if I'd like for that same criteria, and now I'll have two expectations for that. Now, one thing you'll notice is once I've attached an expectation, you'll see the expectations below here, and you can remove them. So for example, if I didn't actually mean to put LS2, I can remove that by clicking on the X and it'll be gone. If I want to add more, I select this little plus icon, add that right back in there. Okay, I can do that for the third one as well, and we'll do maybe 2DC3. We'll align that expectation there. Now this rubric now is the exact same one that Pete made and attached to the assignment 5. However, this rubric is going to have those expectations now, as you can see here. Now, one thing you can do actually here is if you wanted to give more levels here, instead of it just being R1, 2, 3, 4, if you wanted to add in another level, let's say it's a level 4 plus, where they're not just getting, you know, an 85, but maybe they're getting 100 out of 100 points. So instead of it just being out of 8, now it's out of 10, and they get 10 here or 8 for level 4. And you can still put all the other pieces inside here. You can now shift these colors to show the appropriate grades on each thing. So if this is a level 3 here, and then these two are level 4s, then now anything that's in level 4 plus or level 4 is going to be in the level 4 category. So you could actually make a 13-point grade scale with level 4 plus 4, 4 minus, 3 plus 3, 3 minus, and so on with that. Okay, now I think because I added in a new level, that changed the overall total here, and I don't want this to be out of 10. But for now, I guess we'll keep that. We could always change this to make this 9, or make this 7 and this 8, and then this whole thing is out of 8 in total, which I think that's what it was out of initially. Maybe it was out of something different, but we can change all of that just by simply going in and changing the numerical values. This is going to save automatically. Again, at the top, you can make sure that it's saved. You can change this to a published rubric so that we can actually put that onto an assignment. I'm going to change the name here. So we'll call this custom points with expectations. Should learn how to type. That's going to say custom points with expectations. It's saving. Notice it's going to be saved, and I'll close that. And now what I'll do is I'm actually going to go to one of the older assignments that we had. You know what? No, I'm going to go right to the same assignment that we had, this Untitled 5. And I'm going to edit that assignment. And what I'll do is under Evaluation and Feedback, notice it says 1 rubric added. I can actually add a second rubric to this, and we'll see what those rubrics would look like. So I'm going to add an existing rubric, and we're going to choose that Custom Points with Expectations, Add Selected, and now you'll see, notice, these 2 rubrics are actually being used on the exact same assignment. Let's go take a look. We'll save and close that, and then we'll have to go in and assess that. So, Untitled 5, let's go in and just click on Untitled 5. That will bring us into here, and we can see that some of Andy was previously published. Let's go in and look at Creed. So we'll evaluate Creed here. And normally we would see his work come up on the left-hand side, but we chose an on-paper submission. So what's the difference really going to look like here with the rubrics? When I click this drop down, notice you have all of those pieces. Criterion 1, you can see the levels, and you can add your own individualized feedback if there was no predetermined feedback for those criterion. Okay, same thing, total score at the bottom. Now let's look at the custom points with expectations. Looks to be the same type of thing, except we have that 4 plus over there. But notice this is tagged to an expectation right here. If you click, you can see 2DC1, that's the expectation. Up on the other one, you didn't see those expectations. So this will actually inform what that's going to be. Now, if I select level 4 here on that one expectation, and then level 1 here, and then we'll go level 4 plus here, that gives the overall piece down here. Great, we can see that. But when you go below now, notice the expectations that were aligned in that rubric now are showing inside here. Okay, so that's what's very useful about this is now that we've had those, right? This level 4, that level 1, that level 4 is going to go through and show the level 1s on that criterion, the level 4s on the other criterions. So it automatically does that. You don't have to go through and go off and check those pieces. Okay, so what you could actually do if you wanted to, you could have a non-points rubric that has the levels with the expectations associated, or you could have a points rubric that has the expectations aligned with it as well. And then it just automatically, when you've done your grading, it automatically will show you the numerical value as well as the expectations as well. So very powerful to use, especially if you're looking to track expectations that way. And that's as simply as just going through and making sure that that when you're creating those rubrics, and I'll just go back into here, you want to use as much of the tool as you can because it provides all the options for you, right? So when we look at that, I guess I'll go into this one in the same way. So inside here, right, we want to make sure that if you can, use the initial feedback because it's going to help you. You won't have to type in over and over and over, oftentimes the same type of suggestions for that student. And then similarly with expectations, if you can, put them in there just because it's going to make your life so much easier to try and help your students understand, well, where's that mark actually going? So if you're grading by expectations, I would very much encourage you to use expectations in your rubrics. So one last thing I'll show you here is if you were ever creating something like the 13-point rubric here, you could do that by just adding in more categories. So you'd have your 4 plus 4, 4 minus, 3 plus 3, 3 minus, 2 plus 2, 2 minus, 1 plus 1, 1 minus, and then R. And you could put all of your different descriptors inside here and your feedback inside here. But notice when you add in an expectation, whatever that is. So if this is your custom expectation, your learning goal you've made for LS1, or if it's something else down here, 2DC1, whatever that is, you align those expectations. And then notice you can click and drag for where these are going to show. So level 4, if I want that to encompass 4 plus 4 and 4 minus, I move the blue right up to here. If I want green to show all of the 3s, then that's going to be, there we go, 3 plus 3, 3 minus, 2 pluses, 2, 2 minus is going to be the level 2s. Level 1 I bring to here, and that would be the way you would end up setting up this type of a rubric so that if you give someone a level 4 plus 4 or 4 minus, that's only going to show up as a level 4 when it comes to the expectations. And the same thing in that range of 3 plus 3, 3 minus. So where this would help you if you were using a points rubric so that you could actually assign individual points, say, let's say it's out of 15. You give 15 for a level 4 plus, you give a 13 for a level 4, and then a 12 for a 4 minus, and so on, right? So you get those points, but the expectation is only ever going to show level 4. Okay, so that's again something you can definitely use to your advantage. However you're looking to do that. Again, my last encouragement would be the rubrics tool in Brightspace is absolutely phenomenal with especially using the initial feedback and the expectations. If you do have questions, we do have some other supporting videos that we can share with you if you ask us. Okay. So that's it. We've covered a lot of stuff on rubrics. I know it is a lot. We've looked at the analytic and holistic rubrics. We've looked at scoring with points, no points, and custom points. And we've also looked at evaluating them that way using the initial feedback and expectations, which has definitely been a lot. Next session we're going to be doing is all about using the tools inside to do, like, how do we actually assess and how do we provide meaningful feedback? So we're getting into that a little bit with the rubrics, but how can we provide other forms of feedback to students? And yeah, we thank you for joining us for this one as well. And we look forward to our next session. Take care, everyone.